Good evening, everybody. So, I did a workshop today, day one of a 2-day workshop that's called reconstructive. Reconstructive is about going beyond what you know, beyond your perception. It's about putting yourself in a situation where you're challenged, putting yourself in a situation where you're confronted with something and you have to deal with it. And it's about shutting off the head and just being in the body, allowing yourself to discover new possibilities to be and to just live. Now, this work is a very profound, it looks very simple, but it's very profound. So the group today, it was held with 16 men. So 16 different men, and the youngest is 28, the oldest was 69, I was 30. And it was just wonderful. One by one, the participants, they started to share their story, where they're coming from. And when somebody starts to open up, so you see it's a man group, it's a man weekend, fundamentals of a man, of being a man. Like, how do you embody it, your manlyhood? And you see these people who are fairly successful, who have lived their lives in certain ways, but you see these patterns coming up, relationship patterns, self-destructive tendencies, emotional tendencies, classic examples of wanting something, like wanting a certain kind of love, wanting a certain kind of relationship, but then also wanting to run away from it. So it's a paradoxical situations. Also, situations where you're basically with a partner and you either want 100% of responsibility or 0% responsibility. So either you say you are responsible, you have to do everything, and I'm not responsible, or you take it upon yourself and you take all responsibility and you don't expect any responsibility from the other person. And it's about finding the balance. Like, I am responsible for my own freedom, for my own development, for my own behavior. That's my 50%, and you are responsible for your own. And then it's about, what do I want, what do you want, and can we negotiate? Like this work, all of this work, if it's taught me anything, it's about the inner child in us. It wants to either, if there's a situation where we have to negotiate, it wants to either please, so it hides and pleases, or it wants to dominate, or it wants to demand. But, like, for instance, there was an example of a guy who, well, I'm not gonna share those examples. They're like private examples, but what's really fascinating about this work is that it goes beyond your limiting beliefs. It goes beyond what you learned, beyond what you are conditioned to do, to act out. And that's so beautiful. So basically, it's about surrendering to energy and feeling. So the way we set it up is, we have 4 people working, and there's always one person who's actively working and 3 are supporting. So it's like a constellation, but on another level. And my teacher, he's used the words, it's like ayahuasca experience without ayahuasca. So it's like a very effective way to alter your state of consciousness, and by allowing yourself the freedom to inhabit your body, but not judge it, not judge whatever is happening, but to allow yourself to have an experience. And even if you have resistance to it, you still are allowing it to go, you're allowing yourself to go through it. There's a kind of magic that happens where it's like you're just being danced by energy. And it's so beautiful that this is accessible to people. Like, I'd never heard about this. I'd never known that this was possible. So you have a certain kind of constellation that you take a role in, and then once you have a role, one of the people gets a theme that they work with, and then that, like, nobody knows anything really. They just get a role, and then somebody gets a theme, and then they take place in a constellation. And then once the facilitator says go, you feel just like an energetic frequency, an energetic vibration of a certain kind of alignment to a certain kind of energetic expression. It's like I'm neutral now, but all of a sudden it's like I'm attuned to a certain energy that wants to express a certain kind of emotion, a certain kind of a dynamic. So all of a sudden I'm standing there and I'm looking at another human being, and I have no idea who, what, I have nothing, but I know my role, and all of a sudden this energy is giving me impulses to act in certain ways. So I act in certain ways. I interact with the person, and then when I interact with the person, there is contact. When there's contact, there's intensity. Both people are forced to relate, to figure out, to meet. And in that contact, in those meetings, because you're doing it unconsciously, but you're seeing it, you're witnessing it, how it happens, and so you're detached from it, and you're actually seeing the themes that are present in your life. So what is one of the themes? So as I said, there are certain themes that are being played out. Now, the themes are given to you very progressively. So there are themes that you go through, and honestly, I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's such beautiful and intimate themes, and it's very fundamental for you as who you are, because it's about identity, it's about your programming between 0 and 6. So between 0 and 6, that's where we as children, when we grow up, we are confused. So we take on everything, We develop the relationship with the mother. We learn about the power dynamics. It's like we see that the mother gives us food, and so to get food, we are willing to do and be and act anything. So there we learn to please. And some people, they get out of that dynamic, and other people, they stay in that dynamic. So yeah, there's so much that I can say, but I don't want to violate the people that have been to the workshop. But yeah, like once you go through an reconstructive experience, you actually feel in your body what it is like to really, like really connect with another human being and not judge that connection. It's like, you can have anger, you can have any kind of emotion, really, any kind of emotion. But then about your own emotion that you have, you may have a need to express that emotion, to share that emotion. But then there can be a judgment about it. A judgment which isn't allowing you to express it, which makes you doubt it, which makes you not make the movement that your energy wants to move. So the inner child in us, it makes everything complicated, right? Everything's complicated because the child doesn't understand, right? right? It wants to understand, but it cannot understand. So it's like the inner child in us is seeking for understanding from other people, but or he wants to understand other people so that then they will understand him, right? So this can be like a guy who wants to understand other people, but then secretly he wants them to understand him in return. So this is like one of the tactics that the inner child uses. But in reality, it's about acknowledging. It's about how can we acknowledge these inner child dynamics in us, all these programming in us, and how can we then, from that honesty, because the core is honesty. If you're honest, right? If you're honest, then you can start. Then you can take a step. Then it's about, okay, where am I? Okay, what do I want? Take the next step. What do I want? Take the next step. What do I want? Take the next step. But what do we do? I want this, but I cannot do this because of that. Or I'm not allowed, or I shouldn't, or they will think this of me. So we don't trust our movements. We don't trust our energy. We don't trust our flow. And so we live inauthentic lives. And we want value from other people. We want people to make us feel valued. We seek validation, we seek approval. But in reality, they can never give us approval or validation. They can temporarily, like for instance, if I say to you, wow, you're such a nice guy, wow, I accept you, I love you. What does that do to you? What does that really do to you? Like initially, but in the long term, has that solved your problem? Will that solve your problem? I don't know. So hearing everybody talk, hearing everybody share, it's so heartwarming to see how all of us men all have the same issues basically. We're all just human beings doing our best, trying to be happy and making the same mistakes, and trying to do as minimal damage as we can, but it doesn't always work. So during this process, there's no thinking. There's only feeling and experience. And the experience is without perception. It's pure experience. Now, when you perceive pure experience, you have the bodily wisdom of that experience. You go through it. When you go through it, for me, I will share my own experience about my own situation. So I had a theme, and the session started. Once the session started, I felt like this energetic impulse. It was like I was on the frequency. My body just started to move. It was almost like I was in a CAP session. It was like I was having an energetic session. I was just connected to an energy, and I was just dancing and enthusiastically and jumping and up and laughing and having fun. And then I was clapping on the ground. It was like I was in Las Vegas and I was having the time of my life. And all of a sudden, one of the participants took me, put me down, and I was just lying on the ground. And I started to feel lack. I started to feel there's not enough. I started to feel being down. And then this guy who was on top of me, he started to choke me. Literally, he started to choke me. Of course, he held back a little bit, and we have a safe word if it goes too far. But all of this is just unfolding, and I'm not controlling anything. He's not controlling anything. The energy is using our bodies as vehicles to show us dynamics of certain energy forms, of certain current active energy expressions in our life that we are not aware of, or that we are aware of. And by seeing them, by being detached from them, by being completely surrendered to them. We see them, and by seeing them, there is an insight, there is a recognition. This is what is happening. And because of that, because you're not judging it, because you're not mixed in it, there's just a clear, compassionate recognition. This is what I need to do with it. So for me, I remember he was choking me, and all of a sudden he stopped choking me. I got up and I got to this corner, and I was just feel like in my whole body, my body feels like a vessel, and I just felt like, there's not enough. Such lack, deep. It was like the well was full, and now the well was dry, and there was sadness. How do I get more? Where is it? And then I went back, and it was funny, because at a certain point, like this guy, I don't know why, but I got this impulse to jump on top of him. So I jumped on top of him, and I got to ride him like a horse. So I jumped on his back, and I was like, woo, like just riding around, having fun, enjoying myself. And when you're interacting with other men, and they're all just men, and you feel that roughness, that sweat, that manly flesh, that manly aroma, that manly texture, there's just such a grittiness to it. And it's like, by having that connection, you like, there's some kind of integration happening of like, it's safe to be a man, it's safe to be around men, it's safe to express myself with men. And it's really like normalizing this social aspect part. There was this one person, like, I really want to share this. There was this one person, and he said, I have friends with whom I go to a bar, but I cannot allow myself to say the things that I'm saying here, because we're expected to be tough. We're expected to be a certain way. We go for a pint, we go for a drink, but not to talk about these things. So we don't. And to be able to see each other in that vulnerability, to see each other, recognize we're all dealing with these same themes, and to see we're all trying to find different ways of dealing with it, of fixing with it, but it isn't working. Why isn't it working? Because whatever issue we have, the issue that we have, whatever pattern we're repeating, because every pattern that you repeat, what you want to do is, and this was said today a couple of times, I want to break that pattern. I want to stop doing what is being done. But that's not the way to go about it. The way to go about it is you look and you try to understand. It's only by understanding that it can transform. It's only by looking at the root cause. Because, if there's a root cause, there may be 26 variations of consequences. This happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. But it's all because of the root cause. So you have to address the root cause. Once you address the root cause, once there's understanding, it's like you pull out the weed and you plant a new seed for something new. Because if we have limiting patterns, limiting beliefs, okay, we can pull them out, but we have to put something in, something different in. So with something different in, it's like, okay, let's say, for example, I'm an asshole. I believe I'm an asshole and men are assholes, right? And that's for me a fact, right? But then, by interacting with men, by having experiences with men, I see, men are not necessarily all assholes. So it's like, it can be, everything can be true relatively to you. One truth may be true for you, not true for somebody else. So you can have a certain kind of truth that you're an asshole, or that people are not assholes. And it's it's all about where is your focus? What are you choosing to believe, right? Because what you choose to believe affects your perception, affects how you see the world, how you interact with the world, and how you live in the world. Now, during the session, there was this period where I just felt like I felt so inhabited by that energy form, and I felt this understanding of like, oh, this is what's been happening in my life with this theme. This is how I've been handling it. And I understood, like, immediately, intuitively in my body, I know, like, this isn't the right way to go about it. This isn't the right way to deal with it. So once I felt that, there was a clear recognition of like, okay, it's okay. Acknowledgement out of compassion, because you're just seeing there's a quality of embracing it and taking care of it, supporting yourself. So it takes about 10-20 minutes. It's one full movement of express. So you start, the energy is inhabiting your body, you move around, it's with open eyes, you interact with each other, no talking. You just interact with each other, you feel, you make contact. And then afterwards, there's a sharing. So after everybody has gone, there's a sharing. Now in between there are also small sharings, but it's like in these sharings that we reflect what surprised us. Because it's all about what is new and what surprised me, right? Because if nothing surprises you, if nothing is new, then you're basically wasting your time because you're just repeating the old. So, for me, it's truly a groundbreaking experience, because to be conscious, to be able to face a group of wild men who are big and strong and, you know, hands-on with you, it's like there's a kind of sense of fragility about yourself that you let go, because you understand that you can basically handle anything. You're probably not gonna die from these face-off, these confrontations. And it's like all of a sudden there's this new awareness of like, oh, this pattern that I just worked on, this theme, it's working out in a certain way in my life. And all of a sudden, when you see it in your life, you see it in such a clarity, and you see that you don't have to follow that. You see you can from a peaceful place, without even trying to, make new movements, make new actions, make new steps, take new steps. And that's beautiful, because over time, like those small steps over time, they are like what lead to transformation. It's like, you know, whenever we're in crisis, we need that cocoon. So if you have like a bug that becomes a butterfly, before he becomes a butterfly, he's in the cocoon. The cocoon, it only opens up at the appropriate time. So whenever the butterfly is growing, right, in the cocoon, the pressure of the cocoon is making his wings stronger because he has to push out. If it opens up before that, his transformation, his development, his maturing isn't complete. So it's about giving yourself the support. What do I need? How can I support myself? How can I take care of myself? What do I want? And then taking steps one by one. instead of avoiding, instead of running away, instead of escaping. And yeah, like this work, it really teaches me about negotiating with the world. So I can share my own experiences with it. For me, I didn't have a father growing up. My father wasn't there. So because my father wasn't there, there's this idea, or almost like this thing, that because I was brought up by women, they molded me to be a certain kind of way. And my teacher told me, it was like, they've molded the perfect man out of you. How they see the perfect man, that's how they molded you. That's how they taught you to be. And now that's his perception, that's how he sees it. It's not necessarily a fact, right? But it was very interesting when he said that, because I understood. I had this impression because I had no father. I didn't have a role model. I didn't have like somebody to inspire to mimic. But then other men shared their experiences with their father. And when they shared that, I was like, it's just a story. It's a story that I believe in and that I identify with and that I keep alive. I didn't have a father. I don't have those experiences. So for me, it was like, oh, I'm not taking my responsibility. I'm giving away my responsibility to this story that I didn't have a father and I didn't learn certain things and I didn't get to integrate certain things. But in reality, I always can take the responsibility to take the steps. It was very interesting for me to see that, to see it so clearly, like, oh, it's all here. I just have to figure out what do I want and then take the steps that I needed to get there. But what did I do instead? For a long period of my time, I got used to just go with the flow, to stream with whatever is happening, to be in the feminine energy, because I enjoy it. When you surrender to the feminine energy, you enjoy being carried by the wave. You just, you bathe in surrender. You bathe in the flow. But honestly, this has become like an escape mechanism for me. Because whenever there was a situation in my life where there needed to be some concrete action, some really hard decision, I wanted to surrender. I didn't want to deal with the decision because I didn't want to deal with the consequence. I didn't want the responsibility of the consequence. So I went into, I'm just going to surrender. 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 And by surrendering, I don't have to deal with it. I surrender myself to life, to energy, to flow, and then it gets dealt with. But I am ignoring actually the contact because there's not enough courage, right? So responsibility, right? It's like courage in becoming. So your courage has to be embodied and your courage has to be expressed. When you act from courage, right? Fear can be there. You don't have to be fearless. It's about seeing the fear, recognizing the fear, and say, okay, with this fear, I will go through that. That's courage. You go through that. And you realize it doesn't have to block your energy. It doesn't have to block the expression of your life. So today was a really deep dive. Tomorrow it's going to be even more intense. I also did a lot of translating. I love translating. I really liked it because having to translate it made me really focus on what was said and maybe have to learn it more. So it was very interesting. Very sleepy right now, so I'm gonna sleep. But yeah, wonderful work. Recommend it to anybody.